So, bam. It's Tanai Drayton. How you doing?
I'm good.
Chilling?
Chilling.
So let's get right into it. You are a screenwriter, director. You do a whole bunch of things.
Yes.
Before we
I'm very
delve
green
in,
though. Very green.
Very green. Okay. But before we get into the depths of all that, why don't you tell everybody your story, like how you got into doing what you do, you know, how you started getting into filmmaking and stuff like that.
I guess as a kid there's like a few films that like stuck out at me, and when you watch them they're different than other movies, and one of those movies was like Reservoir Dogs. I watched it with my cousin and she passed out and I'm like up watching it till like 2 o'clock in the morning, fascinated by it. And the most fascinating part was that it was perfect as a construction, but it didn't mean anything. Like it had no redeeming meaning or qualities or values, or like the story didn't really impart any kind of new anything. It was just kind of delighting in a lot of crap. So I was fascinated by that. So it kind of, you know, stuck in my head like, oh, it's someone's a director, someone made that. And when I went to college, I was studying English and I was going to major in that, and I had this plan to go to like law school after and be a corporate lawyer and make lots of money, and then I thought that that would make me kind of an evil person, so I changed courses a little bit. I'm like, well, what kind of thing could I do and still kind of like myself in the morning and have fun doing it? And so I started to kind of veer towards what I want to write. And then I kind of was really into film at the time, and so I'm like, well, actually, I want to write films. And so that's how the film directing came. And then I went to school at SC.
What does a director do? For those that don't really know, like a lot of people talk about I want to direct and things like that, but what exactly is a director's? Yeah, what is their responsibility?
A director is kind of like coordinating the whole production in terms of, you know, they're hiring or contacting or, you know, imparting their vision to the cinematographer. They're in the booth with the editor editing the finished version of the film. They're, you know, making sure that the actors are primed and ready to shoot, and they rehearse the scenes with the actors. So it's basically kind of making sure all the things you see on screen are coordinated so you can do them, whether it's like acting or camera. They're not actually like in charge of like the locations, but they have, you know, they're directing all the different parts of the shoot, all the different parts of the crew in terms of what you're doing and how it's done.
Okay.
They're the captain of the boat.
Okay. So were you more interested in the directing or the writing?
I was more interested in the writing, but I think I'm really like a lot of writers a little protective of the writing, and so the only way I felt I could control kind of what happened to it was to direct it. I want to grow into directing, like, you know, professionally versus doing that right now. I want to write right now and then do that later.
So let's talk about the film that you finished, Conservative Kink. How did that come about?
That came about because I was having a debate with myself about like what a whore was. You know, if I believed in the word whore, if I thought a woman could be a whore, what a whore did to be a whore.
Well, how did that debate start? Like you were just thought about the question one day, or?
No, I was watching Cat House, that documentary or that reality show about prostitution, because I'm fascinated by just the act of being so. Like there's no shame. I mean, I'm sure they have some internal whatever going on, but they could just talk about being a prostitute very openly and kind of describe their day, and I was fascinated by that. And there was a girl on there, and I was looking at her, and I'm like, wow, she doesn't look like a whore to me. And the fact that I thought that in my head was kind of interesting, like, well, what does a whore look like? And so that's where that came from. And then I wanted to kind of do a story where there was like one character who was really like in touch and in charge of their sexuality and very like external about it and very loud about it, and then I wanted another character who was very like tame and conservative and, you know, not really in touch with her sexuality, to play off each other, and that's kind of where the story came from.
Are you still debating that now, or did you come to a conclusion in that in the middle of writing it? Or?
About like if there's a right or a wrong, or if there's
a right or a wrong, or such thing as a whore, or what does it mean for women's sexuality, or anything like that?
Theoretically, there's not, or intellectually, I'm no, there's no such thing as a whore, but I still assign that to people if I'm like mad or evil or being a bitch. So no, I don't, but because I'm like conditioned to believe in such things, even if I don't want to, I can't really disavow them. So. On some level, no, but the movie just taught me to kind of acknowledge that people are kind of, I mean, the goal of the movie too was like, we occupy both spaces, even if we think we are like more this way or this way, it's kind of like you still have both inside of you.
Right.
You know, you're not one thing. You kind of encompass a broad scope of like realities, and so that's the thing with the movie. Like the mom has moments where she's conservative and she's tame and she's like, you know, wanting a stable kind of traditional relationship, and there's times when the daughter is, you know, liberating herself and exploring and experimenting, and so it's kind of about them kind of finding their way to the middle.
So how long did it take you to write it?
Well, I did this as my thesis for SC, and I wrote it over a course of a semester, but the original script was a lot different than what I shot. I got a lot of feedback about the original script, and a lot of people hated it. And
why?
It was very explicit. I think in the beginning, the approach I took was to be very on the nose about what I was going for, and very like, this is it, instead of being a little bit more subtle. So it was very explicit sexually, and like it wasn't on camera sex, but there was a lot of implied like sex, and it just kind of, I think, scared people a little bit. And I thought to direct something like that, I'd actually have to be really on top of my game and be careful, because what I would mean to say and what would be read could be very different, and that was something I didn't want to do. So I kind of reworked it and for another 6 months.